Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host and guide, Courtney Anderson. Our show today is part of our Law Lovers Lounge series. And of course, we love the law because the law is the one thing that allows us, in theory, to have equality, transparency, and justice. Ideally, if we have a rule of law, then we don't have a rule of men. We don't have nepotism and connections and corruption making decisions, but we all have the same criteria and we all have the same consequence. We all have the same opportunities in life and we all have the same responsibilities. So the rule of law is something that I'm really enthusiastic about, which is why it's the Law Lovers program. And it's also a lounge. To clarify, as always with these programs, this is not an attorney who you have hired providing you legal advice for your life. This is a generic educational program, and it's a lounge. That's why it's relaxing, and again, not at work, not giving you legal advice that pertains to your life. I am an attorney. I am not your attorney. It's a big deal. You have not hired my law firm by virtue of taking part in listening to these educational programs. So, here we are in our show today in our Law Lovers Lounge is a part two. It's a part two. And the topic today is, I've been pulled over by the police. Now what? So in part one, we talked a lot about, I did a whole little explanation, difference between criminal and civil law in general. Civil law punishment has to do with making you either do something or stop doing something, right? Like fulfill terms of a contract or cease and desist from some behavior. And the punishment is usually money. So it's either making you do something or not do something and or money. In the criminal justice system, generically the difference is that your punishment may include money, usually like a fine, and that'll be money you pay into the government. And more importantly, your punishment will include at some level of the criminal charge, the severity of that charge, it will include the potential for incarceration. So they will literally take away your freedom of your person and put you in a jail or prison, depending on the severity of the crime. In the U.S., in general, if the maximum punishment would be up to a year of your freedom being taken away by you being in jail, so up to a year, it's usually called a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor is a maximum up to a year, and generically in the U.S. And then if it's over a year of prison as the maximum punishment, it would be called a felony. In the U.S., you can have prison that can be life, meaning that you will go to prison and you'll stay there until you die naturally. And in some instances in the U.S. and very few other countries in the world, if someone is convicted of a crime, and they could be actually punished by death. The government won't wait for them naturally to die, but the government will actually kill them, will actually electrocute or hang or poison, what they call lethal injection. So that's the difference. Civil in general is a wrong that's happened, and usually a punishment is that you have to do something or not do something, and you have to pay money. And criminal is you have to pay money, a fine, and you can be incarcerated. If it's up to a maximum of a year, it's usually a misdemeanor. If it's over that, it's a felony. A felony would be more than a year, up to life in some criminal charges, and in some very rare instances in some countries, the government itself will actually kill the person, I guess in theory as punishment for the bad thing they did. So that's in big picture, criminal. So again, all over the world, there are different nuances to what the different criminal charges are called. There are different rules in different parts of nations. There are different rules in nations. But in big picture, what we talked about in first one, and in part one of this two-parter, is that the criminal defense lawyer, the person who represents the defendant in a criminal charge, and in a criminal charge it's almost always styled as, meaning that the case is brought as the government, the people, against the person. So it'll usually, like in the U.S., at a federal level, if you violate a federal crime, it'll usually say, the United States of America, the United States is the party that's bringing the charge, and then the defendant is whoever the person is that did the bad thing allegedly. So the defense lawyer represents the defendant, the person who's defending, right? And the defense lawyer then is up against, in most instances, the government. So if it's a federal crime, it would be the federal government. If it's a state crime, it would be the state. In the states, for example, in Texas with criminal cases, I did a lot of criminal defense in Texas. The cases read the state of Texas versus, whoever the person is. So if it was me and I had a criminal charge, it would be the state of Texas versus Courtney Anderson. There you go. That's kind of, to me, that should be pretty sobering. And I used to explain to clients and kind of walk them through so that they get it. This is kind of, I think, helpful. It's literally the government versus you. It's literally the state versus you and whatever resources they have. And we're almost always, as defendants, the state has more resources than we do, whether it's literally like a subsection of a nation, a state, or it's a nation state. The government just has more money, more resources than the individual defendant. So as a defense attorney, usually my role is, in my mind, to ensure that the government is doing what they're supposed to, which is not 100% of the time that happens in any part of the world. There's individual bad actors, individual people who don't do what they're supposed to, and so then you can't trust what the government says because maybe they're a government employee or the government, law enforcement professional wasn't telling the truth. And so that's what the defense lawyer is there to do. As I shared in part 1 of the show, I've had a lot of angry people over the years say to me, "How dare you? How could you? I couldn't sleep at night if I represented horrible, bad people." And again, I want to reiterate, the defense attorney's job is not to go, I think, necessarily, quote, get people off, quote unquote, meaning that you take murderers and serial killers and you're gleeful and happy if they're out in society murdering and serial killing, you and your loved ones. That's not the goal. I mean, the goal is to make sure that the government follows their own rules. That's the goal. And sometimes the government doesn't do so, and it's a really horrible person who, they're not horrible people, but the things they've done are horrible. We don't want to ever make anyone less than as a person, but some people do really horrible things, and the government didn't follow their own rules, and because of that, then they are not able to prove their burden in court, right? The plaintiff, the government, has to prove their case. The defendant, in theory, doesn't have to do anything. They just have to defend, but in real life, juries especially want to understand what's the defendant's explanation. So even though in theory you're not supposed to have to do anything, you're just supposed to defend, in real life the jury wants a story. So you need to come up with something to explain a plausible explanation that especially a jury would believe. So the defense attorney's role, in my mind, is to defend against the system not doing what they're supposed to and make them meet their burden of proof, which is usually in criminal cases beyond a reasonable doubt. So all that is to say, we talked about in part 1. I've been pulled over. In part 1, I talked about we want to be proactive. Everything in the criminal justice system, I'd also argue the civil justice system, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's a cliche, but there's some accuracy to that. Just prevent these problems, and then your life is so much easier than it is to just be totally mindless about prevention, and then you have all these problems, and then you go to a lawyer to try to fix it. It's much harder for me to fix it than it is for you just to prevent it. So in that spirit, in part 1, we talked about the fact that you want to make sure you know what's in your vehicle before you get in the vehicle. And I'm not exaggerating. What's in there? What's in the hood, under the hood, what's in the trunk, what's in your glove compartment, what's under the seat. If you loan your car to someone, definitely look at it again before you start driving around. If you have other people in your vehicle, you need to make it clear what your personal ethics and rules are about what people have on them. In other words, if you have somebody in your car and they're carrying weapons, illegal drugs, stolen credit cards, it's really not helpful for you. I would probably, make sure that you choose wisely. Also, one of the reasons I did a part 2 on this is I didn't have enough time to put into the idea of you need to make sure what you put in your body before you go out and start using a motor vehicle. And that has to do with the concept of driving while under the influence of something. And that's what that means, is under the influence of some sort of non-natural substance, and it could be something that's completely legal. For example, alcohol in the United States, in most jurisdictions, is legal if you're not a minor. So if you're an adult, in most parts of the U.S., the age is 21. It used to be 18 when I was younger. I think there's some parts of the world it still is. And anyway, the point is that when you hit the age of majority, which is just sort of randomly set by legislatures, whenever you hit that age, then now you're legal to drink alcohol. So it's not a crime to if you're 25 or 55 or 75 to go out and buy alcohol. There's some restrictions, again, in different parts of the U.S. about when you can buy alcohol and what day of the week you can buy alcohol and what time they sell alcohol and all this kind of stuff. But in general, once you're old enough and it's the legal time for them to sell alcohol and you go buy the alcohol, that in and of itself is perfectly legal. The problem that people get into when it turns to the issue of, I've been pulled over by the police, now what? The problem tends to be when you buy something legal and then you use it and operate a vehicle in an illegal manner. I'm allowed to have alcohol. I'm over 21, which barely, right? I'm so young, but I am not allowed legally to operate a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol. Now, there's different rules about what constitutes under the influence. Alcohol is not just in liquor or beer or wine or whatever, but there's alcohol in some medicines and there's alcohol in some other things that, mouthwash or something. So it could be that I was using something that's not even an alcoholic, beverage, and then there was a little bit of alcohol in that, and now, of course, there's a trace of alcohol or whatever in my system. And we're not talking about that. So again, you have to define everything, right? If you have a rule of law, then you don't leave it up to somebody to make the decision. To someone's discretion of what constitutes under the influence. You define everything, so it's fair. It just takes a massive amount of time, and you have all these different processes everything has to go through, right? Because it all has to become, a law, and then you have to have it, enforced, and it's interesting. But I believe this is probably the best system because it's most fair, right? So in alcohol, they'll have different rules, right? So 0.08 in most parts of the U.S. and above, that's evidence that may show that you are under the influence of alcohol and it is influencing your ability to drive. And less than that is evidence that you're not necessarily illegally operating the vehicle under the influence of alcohol. The problem, of course, in real life, and I've done a ton of these cases as a lawyer, driving under the influence with alcohol, is, the alcohol dissipates over time, right? So it depends on what type of test was given. Sometimes the machinery that law enforcement uses to measure the blood alcohol level is not calibrated correctly. It's not giving the right measurements. Sometimes the time lapse, between the time that someone imbibed maybe an alcoholic beverage and then by the time that the police pulled them over, and then by the time the police gave a test, it might have been even more time, so that by that time their blood alcohol level may have been totally different from when they were actually driving the vehicle. All that's to say the easiest way to prevent all of this, just don't drink and drive. And it's a cliche again, but it's it goes back to my ounce of prevention thing. And I think I'm excited about, in some ways, the idea of the technology coming along, the autonomous car, which I'm super excited about, which is basically a self-driving car that would alleviate all these sort of operator error type problems. Because if the car is, programmed and the car is driving itself, then you don't have to worry if the driver is, texting or drinking alcohol or whatever. I mean, they're just basically a passenger. I think that is going to hopefully come very quickly, and it'll do a lot to save lives in the world. If as soon as that technology sort of is ubiquitous. But in the interim, then just like you check in your car and make sure, hey, is there an illegal weapon under my seat? Okay. Then just don't. If you've taken too many prescription pills, which is a huge amount of a problem for people in these cases. It's alcohol, prescription pills, which are, again, legal, but you're not supposed to take the prescription pill and then drive, and people do, and then, you, again, have a problem with the driving under the influence. And prevention. If you're not sure, then don't drive. If you think taking that medicine might not be appropriate, then plan to take that medicine when you don't have to go anywhere. If you really need to go anywhere, then call a friend or a relative. If you don't have that, you need to take a cab or use the metro or the subway or the bus. If you don't have any of that, you got to start coming up with a different plan. But I've had clients who have multiple offenses in this area, and I would, especially people who have alcoholism, they're addicts, and they destroy their bodies and their liver and everything with alcohol, and they just keep driving. And I would tell them as bluntly as I could, you obviously you're destroying your life and your health and your everything, but you have got to stop driving. if you need to sit somewhere and drink until you pass out, I mean, that's an awful, horrible, abusive, sad thing to do, but it would prevent this driving while intoxicated charge, which at a certain point becomes a felony just because you keep repeating it. And it's very sad. So what we want to do to be proactive in terms of the police pulling us over is don't give them a reason to pull you over. So I'm trying to go over all the big things. In the episode 1, I talked about your license plate and registration stickers and tags being current. We talked about the fact that you don't have any sort of contraband on you or on anybody else in the vehicle. We talked about the fact that you're not speeding in part 1. And now I'm spending all this time talking about that you're not driving under the influence of any type of substance, whether it's legal or illegal is irrelevant. I don't care if it's heroin or if it's your psychiatrist prescribed anxiety medication. It's irrelevant. The point is you're not supposed to be operating a motor vehicle because you don't have the facilities to be able to drive safely. And just don't do it. It's a sad thing, and all the untold pain and death and destruction and injury that's happened just because of this. And of course the new thing is people texting and talking on their cell phones and driving. I don't even like to drive, which is weird. I mean, it's one of my least favorite activities, which is actually why I'm super excited about the autonomous car. I just don't like it. I don't like it. The whole hassle of it to me is just a pain. I like driving sometimes just like on a relaxing weekend, just going out and, in the country and kind of enjoying the scenery, my top down on a convertible. But I don't like, bumper to bumper, crazy driving, packed in with no room, people who don't signal, people who tailgate. It's just too stressful. It's not my favorite thing, but I plan ahead, and I strongly suggest you do. So the first part of this is just try not to give the police a reason to pull you over. Yet, I mentioned in episode 1, even when you have done nothing at all wrong or possibly wrong, you're not speeding, you have your registration and tags are correct, you're not driving under the influence of anything legal or illegal or anything that negatively impairs your ability to drive, you're not a distracted driver, you're not texting or cell phone driving or listening to music or doing anything, putting on makeup, whatever. You're literally just, doing a very good job, you're driving appropriately in your lane at the correct speed, blah, 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 and still police pull you over. I shared in episode 1, it's happened to me on multiple occasions. I've been pulled over for no reason. I believe, based on the facts, that they pulled me over because of, my appearance. I had one instance I shared in episode 1 where I was pulled over with a male relative. Actually, a couple of instances, but I shared one where the police claimed that I had a light out on my license plate when it wasn't even dark, and the light actually was on. But that's whatever. What I mean by that is they had no real reason legally to pull me over. At the time that I get out and start screaming at them and yelling at them that it was illegal and it was discrimination, I did not. I did take their information, the officer's badge and everything. I didn't stand there and make a big deal of it. Let me write down your badge. No, because look, they have power in that instance. I am not going to forget the fact that they really do have power. Now, it's not the power they're supposed to have, but in the United States especially, they have weapons. I don't. And even if I did, I'm not going to use, it's just, look, I think that it's an admirable and a frightening job. I used to tell people, that are police officers and that I couldn't do it. I'd be too scared. I think I would be good at, obviously I know the laws, and I'd be really good at knowing what I'm supposed to do. I think I'd look good in some of those uniforms. I think I love a uniform. I think it's spiffy and looks good and everything. But I'm telling you, if somebody said to me, you need to go over there and pull that car over and see what those people are doing, or, help us, we have a search warrant and go in these people's house, I'd be petrified. I'd be scared to death. Who knows what those people are doing? And what if they are doing something horrible and scary? What if they are, international gun runners or something? And I'm too scared and I'm too frightened. I couldn't do a job like that. I'd just be nervous all the time and too scared to do anything. So the fact that somebody else is braver than I am and willing to do that is good. In theory, if they're actually doing their job and going over and looking for, violations of the law, I want them to stop a drunk driver. I don't want to be killed by these people. Every time I see somebody weaving and everything, I'm like, oh my goodness, and I'm mentally trying to remember their license plate and trying to put as much space from them as I can. I don't want them to kill me. I want them to go out and stop all these horrible people in the world, not horrible people doing horrible things, that are hurting people and burglaring and raping and assaulting people and all this. Go stop that. Help them learn that they need to have a consequence. So yeah, I support that. I just know I couldn't do it. I'm too frightened. So when the police pull you over, it's a disparity of power. Right? I mentioned earlier the disparity of power between the defense attorney and the government is huge. It's a reality of on the moment, in real life, at the moment the police are there, and they're asking me questions and they pull me over, there's a disparity of power. It doesn't even matter the fact that I am a lawyer and I know all my rights and all this kind of stuff. That's totally irrelevant. That's why, it doesn't do me any good. I've never mentioned it. Why would I? I'm not going to get into an argument with them. They have more power than I do. Whether or not it's an illegal application, they still have it. And, we have all these cases around the world where, police, harm someone or police detain someone unreasonably, or some police, in the U.S. especially kill people. I'm not going to be doing anything to contribute to that negative outcome. So in the interim, when I'm having to interact with them and I don't want to, and they've pulled me over, I believe, for no reason, I'm not going to get into an argument and start screaming at them or telling them what idiots they are, that they're doing, I know who they are and I have their name and they violated my rights. What good does that do me? And maybe it is one of these rogue people. Maybe it's a rogue police officer who's themselves on some kind of drug or intoxication, or maybe they, are having a mental breakdown and they have a weapon. I'm not going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time in such a dangerous setting. So in those types of settings, again, in episode 1, I said the first thing you got to remember is just shut up. You need to shut up, shut up, shut up. The police will often ask you open-ended questions because they're trying to get you to talk, because they realize that most people, when they start talking, tell them totally stupid things that help the police and hurt the person. That's why when they give you what they call in the U.S. your Miranda rights, they say to you, you have the right to remain silent. Anything that you say may be used against you in a court of law. They mean that. I cannot tell you how many criminal defense clients I had that when I went over the police report where the police wrote down what they said, the person was like, I can't believe they wrote that down. And, yes, idiot, what do you think they're doing? And I mentioned in episode 1, they're now most of the time, the more savvy police officers, to benefit everybody, are videotaping and audio recording all these stops. So they have proof on their side to show they didn't do anything wrong when they have a citizen's complaint or a lawsuit. And then on the other person's side, it helps everybody if you have the record. So I'm not going to do anything to contribute to the situation. So when I've been pulled over, with relatives or whatever in the car, that I think we were just the wrong color in the wrong place, because there was nothing wrong with my car. And, more recently I'm remembering I actually came back from court. So I went to court, and it was in a different county. I was in my car coming back home. It was, around lunchtime. And I'm in a suit because I've gone to court as a lawyer, right, to go do some law work. And I was driving. I was almost to my house. And I was around the corner from my house, and I really had to go to the bathroom. So this is part of, my stress I'm under. So I'm, but I'm not speeding. I never, like I said, I sped a couple of times when I was in my early 20s, and I got tickets for it, and I learned how horrible it was, and I haven't sped since then. And that's been a very long time. So anyway, I was pulled over by this police officer, and he did the same thing they usually do, opening a question. Do you know why I pulled you over? And, of course, I said in episode 1, I'm repeating here, that I do respond. I don't just sit there and say to them, I have the constitutional right to remain silent. I know that's true, but it's not going to help me. And by pissing them off, meaning using sort of slang, if I make them angry, it's not helping me, right? My goal is to get out of this situation as quickly as I can and be on my way. So he asked me, do you know why I pulled you over? And I said no, which is what I always say when they ask me that question, no. The truth is because I don't, because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I mentioned in episode 1 that even though in the U.S. they are supposed to have a warrant to be able to search your vehicle, and they can ask for permission. They will often if they believe there's something in the car, and they'll ask you, do I have the right? Do I have permission to search your car? My advice to you would always be to say no, even if the car's totally empty. The fact that they've asked you and wasted your time, if you haven't done anything wrong, say no. If you think there might be something in that car that's illegal, you definitely need to say no. Now, the reality is, as I said in episode 1, even if you deny them permission to search your vehicle, if they think there's probable cause to search your vehicle, they will often do a warrantless search anyway, and often those searches are upheld in court. So that's why my advice was so much on just don't have anything in your vehicle or on you or in you or whatever. So the guy was telling me, do you know I pulled you over? I said no. Now remember, I'm in my suit, coming back from court, right around the corner from my house, and I have to go use the restroom, so I really have an urgency. I am not going to sit around with this guy. Now, emotionally, I'm angry. I'm angry every single time the police have pulled me over illegally, A, because it's a violation of my constitutional rights, and it's a waste of my time, and it shows me that for everything that I read and see in the media at large, that, these things don't really happen anymore. Of course they do, because they happen to me, and I mean, really? I don't even... I drive like a little woman. I don't even drive that much. I'm one of the most boring people in the world. Literally. Just for fun, I read books. Talk about a total waste of law enforcement's time. For me? I don't even do anything. Ever, really. My life is so boring. So anyway, but here we go again, right? So I'm, of course, mad for a million reasons, but I really do have to go to the bathroom. So I'm trying to get this guy to hurry up. So I did everything I talked about in episode 1, especially if you look like, which varies around the world, what police claim they're frightened of. It could be that you're young. It could be that you're a male. It could be that you're a female. It could be that you're light-skinned or dark-skinned. It could be that you're large frame or small frame. I don't know. Whatever it is that they claim that the profile is. Just put your hands on the wheel so they can see your hands. A lot of these things go wrong when the police panic and feel like you're reaching for a weapon, or they didn't know what was happening, and then they shoot first or taser first or ask questions later. Just try to minimize that. So I put my hands on the wheel, and then I ask them, they say, I need your license registration. And I say to them, okay, I'm going to reach for my license registration, which is, in my glove compartment and in my purse or whatever, my license. And then I hand that to them, both hands visible the whole time. I never get out of the vehicle. I would never get out of a vehicle unless they ordered me to get out of a vehicle. As I said, I would never agree, never give them permission to search anything. Look, they're the government, and if we're a rule of law, then they have to follow the rules. So if they think that I'm worth it and they need to get a warrant, or they have to impound my car, or they claim they have some probable cause, they need to be either falsify that probable cause because I haven't given them any reason, or they need to, go through all the hassle on their part of following the law. But I say no when they ask if I pull them over. Keep my hands on the wheel. Of course, we talked about episode 1. You pull over immediately. You signal immediately that you see them and all this kind of stuff. You never, ever, ever flee from police. It's the stupidest thing you could ever do. It endangers your life. It endangers other people's lives, and it's just dumb. You're not going to go anywhere they can't get you. Especially in the U.S., they have helicopters and all that. It's just dumb. There's no point in it. Just don't do that. You could kill someone or hurt yourself. Why? Stop it. So I pull over. I pulled you over. I always say no. Put my hand, have my hands on the wheel from the moment that I'm pulled over. Then they're always behind you, and they walk up and they ask, license registration. I say I'm going to reach in my purse, license registration. They're watching me, right now. See, no weapon. It's so stupid, but whatever. It's not stupid. Some people do have weapons. I do understand that police officers have been hurt in the line of duty, and I respect, like I said, anybody brave enough to do this job, I respect immensely. But on the other hand, me personally, it's stupid because it's not me, and I just feel like, really? But whatever. So, then if somebody had ever asked me, did they have permission to search my car, I would say no. I would also understand, though, if they claim they have probable cause, they're going to search it anyway, warrantless. And often those are upheld if they really do claim they have some sort of probable cause. I'm not going to give them one, though, which is why I've been doing all of my proactive discussion. So in that instance where I really had to go to the bathroom, I was trying to get that guy to hurry it up. What they usually are doing now is they'll go and they have little computers and they go and run your license plate to see, if it's a stolen car, and they run your driver's license, see is there a warrant out for your arrest or whatever. And then when they finish all of that, they come in and give you your stuff back. At that last instance I was sharing with you when I had to go to the bathroom, I was looking fidgety and I kept looking at the guy in my rearview mirror because I need to go to the bathroom and I'm really angry. I just came from court. Are you serious? I'm like around the corner from my house. He had no probable cause to stop me. I don't even remember what the lie was that guy said that day. I really don't remember. I'm sitting here trying to remember, and I can't remember. And I think I blocked it out. I was so mad. And I think the problem might have been he thought I shouldn't have been in that neighborhood, I guess, even though I live there, which is a whole other, indignity and makes me angry. But like I said, I'm not going to escalate it while we're in that setting. I do make notes of their, badge and information. In that instance, of course, I can't even be ticketed because I wasn't doing anything wrong. So I never get tickets or warnings or whatever because they don't ever have a reason. I just don't know why they do this illegal behavior. I am trying, in the legal system, and you need political change to make people stop doing these things. So it's not like I accept this at all. I don't accept it at all. I should never have to do this. No, neither should anyone else. But it does happen, and so I'm giving you the reality of if it does happen, I'm just going to try to lower my chances of being, injured or killed, or wrongfully arrested or whatever. That's why you don't speak to them. So never yell at them. Don't call them names. Don't say anything. That's why all I really say is no when they ask me, do I know why they pulled me over? And then when they ask for my registration, I say something like, I'm going to reach in my purse now, while they're watching my hands. And then I never say anything. I don't have anything to say to them, and mostly I'm just really pissed off. I'm very angry that they wasted my time and did this to me and violated my rights and tried to make me feel that I just am doing a bad thing by driving around, being a law-abiding person. But I'm not going to take that out on that cop because it's not going to help me. But I do get their information, and I do follow up if I can. as a lawyer, as a public citizen, most police departments have some sort of representative to try to take citizens' complaints. And then there's things we can do politically to try to change things. But I hope this helps. This is the end of part 2 of I've been pulled over by the police. Now what? Remember? Shut up. Remember, proactive assessment of everything in the car. Everybody is in the car with you and what you've ingested. License, registration, tags, all that kind of good stuff. And then if they do pull you over, immediately pull over, signal, hands up on the wheel, visible, and then don't say anything other than a yes or a no. And if you can't even say that, you think without hurting yourself, don't say anything at all. Understand, even if you deny giving consent to a search, they're probably going to do it anyway. And then just, again, keep your mouth shut. The number one thing you need to do the whole time, if the police interact with you, if they do arrest you, just shut up. Just stay quiet. You've got to shut up. And that will help you immensely. It's also going to help your lawyer be able to defend your case and do what they can to fix this to the best of their ability. But you have got to shut up. Do not say anything else to the police. It does not help. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com.